High above the earth, in the endless black of space, floated a shining structure called Virilia. It was not a spaceship. It was not a station. It was a private estate, owned by one of the richest men alive, Cale Thorne. Cale lived alone in his floating palace. Everything around him was made of polished glass, silver walls, and soft lights. His estate had gardens, fountains, and robotic servants. It was beautiful but cold. Just like him, Cale Thorne was a genius, a millionaire who built machines that saved cities and destroyed armies. But everyone who knew him feared him. He never smiled. He never thanked anyone. He gave orders like a machine and treated people like tools. When his last maid quit without a word, Cale didn't care. He simply ordered a new one from Earth. After all, humans were easy to replace. Or so he thought. Her name was Lyra. She arrived in a small shuttle wearing simple clothes and carrying only one small bag. Her brown eyes were tired, but steady. Her hands were calloused, proof that she had worked hard all her life. She didn't speak much when she met Cale. Follow the rules. Don't ask questions. Stay out of restricted areas, he said, without even looking at her. Lyra simply nodded. She was assigned a small room near the back of the estate. Not that she minded. After living in a crowded refugee zone on Earth, even a small clean room and space felt like a luxury. Every day, Lyra cleaned the long silent halls of Virilia. She fixed tiny malfunctions, kept the floors spotless, and organized the storage chambers. She worked quietly. She listened. She observed. Cale never once said good morning. If something wasn't perfect, he would frown and walk away. If something broke, he would call her sharply over the intercom. Fix it, now. Still, Lyra never complained. She moved like water, soft but steady. What Cale didn't know was that Lyra was smarter than he thought. She used to be a technician before the war destroyed her city. She had repaired old satellites with her bare hands. She wasn't just a maid. She understood machines, sometimes even better than Cale's robots did. And that's how she earned his attention. One evening, Cale was working in his lab when the lights flickered. A power relay had overloaded, threatening a total system shutdown. Before his robots could respond, Lyra was already there, wrench in hand, rerouting wires, sealing the fuse. The lights steadied. The system buzzed back to life. Cale turned sharply. "How did you?" "I've fixed these relays before," Lyra said calmly. Back on Earth, old satellites used the same type. Cale stared at her. For the first time, he noticed something. Her voice was calm, but not afraid. She wasn't nervous around him. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was just doing her job. And doing it well. "Don't touch systems without my permission," he said finally. "Yes, sir," she replied, her face unreadable. He walked away without another word. But that night, while sipping synthetic wine in his glass chamber, Cale couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she had acted fast, the way she had stayed calm, the way she hadn't looked at him like others did, with fear or admiration. He didn't like it. Or maybe he did. And far down the hall, in her small room, Lyra sat on her bed, staring out of the window. The stars were so close now. She remembered the cold streets of Earth, the ruins, the hunger. This job was just another step to survive. But something told her this place, this man, this strange sky was about to change everything. Every morning on Virilia began the same. Cool white lights turned on slowly, soft music played in the halls, and the robots glided out to begin their tasks. But Lyra was always awake before them. She had learned the rhythms of the floating estate, the hum of the engines, the temperature shifts in different rooms, and which machines needed extra care. She never missed a detail. She moved quietly through the corridors, cleaning, fixing, checking. Cale barely noticed her. To him, Lyra was just another helper. She didn't talk unless spoken to. She didn't ask questions. She didn't break rules, but Cale did notice one thing. The problems in the estate had stopped. No more flickering lights. No more broken doors, no more delays in the water system. Everything worked perfectly. And Kale, a man who noticed everything, began to wonder why. One afternoon, while working in his private lab, he saw her again, this time adjusting the drone charging unit. Her movements were smooth, focused. She didn't look up when he entered. She didn't panic or speak. She just finished the task, stood up, and quietly moved past him with a respectful nod. Kale watched her go. Strange. He thought. Later that day, he checked the system logs. Sure enough, most of the small repairs and fixes had no robot signatures. They were done manually. By Lyra. She hadn't asked for access. She hadn't reported it. She had just done what needed to be done. She's efficient, Kale admitted aloud. But too curious. That night, he watched her through the estate's camera logs, not out of distrust, but curiosity. Lyra never entered restricted areas. She never touched anything personal. She cleaned the art displays, adjusted the old planetary models, and even fixed a glitch in the greenhouse humidity system without being told. But something else caught Kale's attention. When she finished her duties, Lyra didn't rest. She went to the observatory window and just stared at the stars, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. She didn't look like a servant then. She looked like someone dreaming. Kale shut the monitor off, feeling something unusual. Something he didn't like. He was thinking about her. The next day, Kale tested her. He ordered her to clean the main engine room, a task he usually reserved for robots. It was dangerous and noisy, full of heat and sharp parts, but Lyra didn't complain. She wore the safety suit, checked the system diagrams, and entered without fear. An hour later, she returned, a bit dusty, but unharmed. "All done, sir," she said calmly. Kale didn't respond at first. Then finally, "You are more capable than expected." Lyra gave a small smile. "I'm just doing what I was hired to do." Kale almost asked her where she had learned to do so much. But he stopped himself. He didn't like asking personal questions. And he definitely didn't like talking about feelings. "Carry on," he said coldly. Lyra nodded and walked away. That evening, Kale sat in his high-glass chamber, looking out at Earth. It glowed softly in the distance, blue and peaceful. He tried to focus on his reports, but his mind kept drifting back to Lyra. Why did she matter? She was just a maid. Just another employee. Just another person. But she wasn't afraid of him. She didn't try to impress him. She didn't act like the rest, and that, somehow, made her impossible to ignore. In her small room, Lyra wrote quietly in her notebook. She didn't keep many things from her past, but the notebook was special. She wrote about the stars, the silence, the machines, and Kale. She didn't understand him yet, but she saw the way he moved, the way he avoided others, the way he looked at the world like he had already lost something precious. "He's cold," she wrote, "but maybe not hollow." She closed the book and looked out the window. The stars above felt closer than ever, and maybe, just maybe, Kale Thorne wasn't as unreachable as he seemed. Veralia moved silently through orbit, as always. The estate's smooth walls and bright lights made everything feel calm and perfect. But outside, something dangerous was building. A strong solar flare had just been detected by the outer satellites. The system sent a warning, but Kale didn't take it seriously. He had built the best shield systems money could buy. Veralia had survived worse. Lyra, however, paused when she saw the alert. Back on Earth, she had seen what solar storms could do. Power failures, fires, even satellite crashes. She had fixed old machines that were fried by the sun's energy. And now she had a feeling something wasn't right. She went to the control panel in the side corridor and checked the shield balance. One sector, Sector 3, was running hot. Too hot. She blinked. Why hasn't this been corrected? Suddenly, the lights flickered. The floor vibrated slightly. Then came a loud humming noise that echoed through the halls. In the main control room, Kale's screens went black for a second. His robots froze. What's happening? He muttered, pressing controls. System error? No, this is ... external. Then the emergency alarm rang. Shield system failure. Solar impact in progress. Kale stood up quickly. His mind worked. Fast, but the problem was growing faster. Power was dropping. The automatic systems weren't responding. The estate was losing energy, and fast. At that moment, Lyra ran into the control room. Sector 3 is overheating. The backup coil is damaged. If we don't shut it down, it'll burn out the power grid. Kale stared at her. How do you know? That? I saw it. And I've fixed this kind of system before back on Earth. I need 5 minutes. Kale frowned. That's dangerous. You'll be exposed to radiation if the next flare hits. I can do it, Lyra said firmly. Unless you want Veralia to go dark forever. Before he could argue, she grabbed a toolkit and ran down the hall. Inside Sector 3, heat filled the air. The safety lights glowed red. Sparks danced from the broken relay as energy surged through the wires. Lyra moved fast. She pulled out the damaged coil, rerouted the power line, and reconnected the circuit. Her hands moved like she'd done it 100 times. She knew she had only seconds. Just as she sealed the system, a shockwave from the second flare hit the estate. The floor shook. Lights flashed. And then silence. Then the lights returned. Slowly. The hum of the estate came back to life. Kale watched the monitors. Sector 3 was stable. The power grid was back. She had done it. A few minutes later, Lyra walked back into the control room, face pale, suit slightly scorched. She dropped the toolkit, took a deep breath, and said, "It's fixed." Kale stood silently, staring at her. His mind was full of questions, but he said none of them. "You could have died," he said coldly. Lyra met his eyes. "You would have too, if the system had failed." Kale didn't respond. He looked away, his hands clenched. "No one has ever spoken to me like that," he said softly, almost to himself. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Then maybe you've been surrounded by the wrong people." He turned to her again. For the first time, there was no coldness in his eyes, just surprise. And something else. Something unfamiliar, respect. Without another word, Lyra turned and left. That night, Kale didn't drink his wine. He sat in silence, replaying the moment in his mind. Her bravery. Her confidence. Her words. He wasn't used to being challenged. He wasn't used to being saved. And he wasn't used to feeling anything at all. Tonight, something inside him had changed. And it all started with one maid who refused to be ordinary. After the solar flare incident, Veralia returned to its calm routine. The lights glowed steadily again. The systems worked smoothly. The robots moved silently through the halls. But something was different. Kale Thorne couldn't stop thinking. He tried to return to his usual tasks, designing new AI systems, checking reports, writing updates for the company, but his focus was broken. Every time he sat at his desk, Lyra's face flashed in his mind. The calm way she spoke, the fire in her eyes when she stood up to him, the way she risked her life for the estate. And for him, it bothered him. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. He was beginning to feel again. And he didn't like it. Lyra, on the other hand, carried on with her work as usual. But inside, she also felt something had changed. Kale hadn't yelled at her since the incident. He hadn't scolded her or ignored her. He hadn't said much at all. But once, she caught him watching her as she walked down the hallway. Not with anger, not with his usual coldness, with ... curiosity. She wasn't sure how to feel. Was it good or bad that he was noticing her? One afternoon, Lyra was dusting the crystal panels in the West Hall. A golden light from Earth's reflection shone through the glass, covering the floor with soft colors. She paused, taking in the beauty of it. Behind her, footsteps echoed. Kale stood near the entrance, watching her. She turned. "Is there a problem, sir?" No, he said after a pause. I was just passing by. Lyra nodded and continued dusting. Cale didn't leave. After a few seconds he said, You're not like the others. Lyra stopped. Other maids? Cale nodded. They were efficient, quiet, obedient, but none of them fixed things. None of them challenged me. Lyra smiled slightly. Maybe they were afraid. Cale looked at her carefully. And you're not? She met his gaze. No, I've seen worse things than a cold boss. There was silence. Cale looked out the window, toward Earth. I didn't used to be like this, he said quietly. Lyra listened. I had a wife once. Smart. Brave. She was a scientist. She helped build this estate. But during the AI rebellion, she was killed because of a choice I made. Lyra said nothing. She saw the pain in his eyes hidden under layers of silence. I thought if I stayed alone, I wouldn't feel anything. Anymore, that it would be easier. Is it? Lyra asked softly. Cale didn't answer. He turned away, walking down the hall. Stay out of the East Wing, he said suddenly. It's restricted. Lyra watched him leave, her heart heavy. For the first time, she saw the man behind the glass cold. Yes, but cracked. That night, she sat in her small room, staring at the notebook again. He's hurting, she wrote. More than he wants to admit. I don't think he knows how to be kind anymore, but maybe he wants to learn. Meanwhile, Cale sat in his private lounge, a place filled with shadows and silence. A single photo sat on the table beside him, his wife, smiling, full of life. He picked it up, stared at it, then slowly set it back down. For the first time in years, he whispered, I miss you. Outside the window, Earth glowed like a distant lantern dot, and somewhere deep in Varelia, two lonely hearts were beginning to melt. Days passed quietly on Varelia, but the silence between Cale and Lyra felt different now. It wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy, like both of them were waiting for something to happen, but didn't know what. Lyra continued her work as usual. She cleaned, repaired small machines, and monitored the estate systems. But in her heart, questions had begun to rise. What happened to Cale's wife? Why was the East Wing always locked? Why did he keep himself trapped inside so much sadness? She never tried to break the rules. But one day, something unexpected happened. There was a system reboot. Lyra had been updating the central cleaning software when the estate's AI suddenly restarted. A soft alarm beeped, then stopped. For a few seconds, all the locks in Varelia blinked red, then green. Even the East Wing door. Lyra stood frozen. She knew it was restricted, but her curiosity and something deeper pulled her toward it. She walked slowly through the hallway, her footsteps light. The door to the East Wing slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the lights were dim. Dust floated in the air. It didn't look like the rest of Varelia. It felt untouched. She stepped inside. The room was filled with old memories. Hologram photos floated above small tables. Cale with a woman smiling beside him. Bookshelves lined the walls. A half-built machine sat in the corner, covered with cloth. There were flowers in a vase, now dried and gray. It was a memorial room. And in the center stood a display case with a photo of Cale's wife. Below it, a message. To my light in the dark. Lyra's heart ached. She could feel the pain that filled this place. This was why Cale kept the room locked. It wasn't about rules. It was about grief. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Cale. What are you doing in here? His voice was quiet, but sharp. Lyra turned around slowly. The lock opened. I didn't mean to come in. I was just drawn here. Cale walked toward her, his eyes dark. You shouldn't have come. I know. But I understand now, she said softly. This room, it's where your heart still lives. Cale looked away. His hands were clenched. She helped me build all of this. She believed in everything I was trying to do. When I lost her, I lost myself. Lyra nodded. That's why you built walls around your heart. Why you pushed everyone away. He laughed bitterly. Including myself. There was a pause. I'm not here to replace anyone, Lyra said gently. I just want you to know you're not alone anymore. Cale looked at her, then really looked. And for a moment, the cold around him cracked again. You remind me of her, he whispered. Not her face, but her strength. Lyra gave a small smile. Maybe that's why you keep looking at me. Cale didn't deny it. Later that night, Cale sat alone in the memorial room. But this time he didn't cry, he didn't drink. He simply sat in silence and let the memories come without fear. Lyra returned to her room, feeling both sad and hopeful. She had seen his deepest wound and still chose to stay. Something had changed between them now. It was no longer just a story of boss and maid. It was the beginning of something deeper, something fragile, something real. The next morning, Virilia felt different. The lights were still soft. The machine still hummed. But something in the air had changed, something small, quiet, but real. Cale Thorne sat at his work desk, staring at the same design he had been working on for hours. His mind wasn't on the screen. It was on Lyra. She had stepped into the room he had kept locked for years. The room that held his pain. And instead of judging him, she had understood. He had never let anyone get that close. And now he didn't know what to do. Lyra kept her routine as usual. She repaired a broken serving bot. She checked the oxygen flow systems. She organized the storage units in Sector 2. But deep inside, she was nervous. Cale hadn't spoken to her all morning. Was he angry? Would he ask her to leave? At lunch, she was wiping down the glass tables when the door slid open, and Cale walked in. She stood still. He didn't shout. He didn't frown. He took a deep breath. I owe you an apology, he said. Lyra blinked. What? Cale walked closer, his eyes calm but serious. For years, I've lived like a machine, cold, uncaring, rude. That's how I treated you too. And yet, you stayed. You fixed this place. You saved it. You even listened. Lyra said nothing. She let him speak. I'm not good with emotions, Cale continued. I forgot how to talk like a human being. But yesterday, when you entered that room, I realized how much I've been hiding. From the world, from myself. Lyra looked at him gently. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't, he replied. You helped me. There was a long pause. Thank you, he added softly, for seeing me, for not running away. Lyra smiled. You're welcome. From that day on, small things began to change. Cale started speaking to Lyra with kindness. Not often, but enough to notice. He asked her opinion when repairing certain systems. He brought her a hot drink when she worked late. Once, he even made a joke dry and awkward, but real. Lyra laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time he tried. Cale had never heard a sound so warm. One evening, they sat together in the observation room. Earth floated below them, glowing in blue and green. Stars blinked in the endless dark. Cale sipped tea. Lyra sat quietly beside him. Do you miss it? He asked. Earth? She said, sometimes. I grew up in a refugee camp. Life was hard, but the sky was always above us. I used to watch the stars at night and wonder what was out here. And now you're here, Cale said. Lyra nodded. And I'm still wondering, he turned to her. You're braver than I am. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You built this place. You survived loss. That takes courage too. Cale looked down at his cup. Not enough to live again. Not until now. They sat in silence. Then Cale asked, why didn't you leave? After the way I treated you? Lyra answered without hesitation. Because I saw something in you. Something broken, but not beyond repair. Cale smiled just a little. You speak like a healer. I'm just a maid, she said. No, he replied. You're more than that. That night, Kale didn't work late. He didn't hide behind machines or silence. Instead, he went to bed thinking of someone other than himself. And Lyra, in her room, finally felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Something was growing between them now. Not just respect. Not just kindness, but a quiet connection. The ice was melting, and underneath it, something beautiful was beginning to bloom. Veralia was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. The cold steel walls, once lifeless, now carried the warmth of small changes, shared tea, soft smiles, short conversations. Kale Thorne had changed. He still wore the same sharp clothes. He still worked late hours and read thick reports. But his voice was softer. His eyes looked longer. And he had started listening. To Lyra, one morning. Lyra was adjusting the greenhouse lights when she heard a beep from the main console. A red warning flashed on the screen. Unidentified AI signal detected near orbital path. Her eyes widened. She quickly ran to the control center. Kale was already there, looking at the screen. "It's a lost AI weapon," he said, voice tight. "Old war tech, from before the ceasefire. It must have drifted into orbit." "Is it active?" Lyra asked. Kale nodded. "Partially. It's scanning systems. If it locks onto Veralia, it could fire." The estate shook slightly. A low hum filled the halls. Kale stared at the console. "We need to leave. Emergency pods are ready." Lyra shook her head. "If we leave, it might follow us. Or worse, it could fall to Earth. We can't let that happen." Kale looked at her. "It's too dangerous." "I know machines like this," Lyra said firmly. "I worked on damaged AI cores during the war. If we get close enough, I might be able to shut it down." Kale hesitated. He had never let anyone put themselves at risk for him. But now someone was offering again. And he couldn't lose her. "I'm going with you," he said. Lyra blinked. "What? You've saved me enough. It's my turn." The two suited up and boarded the small repair shuttle. As they flew toward the drifting AI weapon, Kale's hands gripped the controls tightly. Lyra sat beside him, calm but focused. Through the window, they saw the object, black, broken, floating like a dark star. A red light blinked on its surface. It looked damaged, but alive. "We'll have to dock," Kale said. "You handle the shutdown. I'll protect you," Lyra nodded. "Just don't do anything heroic." Kale gave a dry smile. "No promises." Inside the weapon's outer shell, sparks flew from broken wires. The AI voice echoed weakly. "Target. Scan ... error ... defense mode ... Lyra moved quickly, opening the panel, connecting her tool. Her hands danced over wires. "Just a few more seconds," she said. Kale stood behind her, watching the alert level rise. Energy spike detected. He pulled out a power blaster just in case. Then suddenly, the lights flickered, and the weapon's red core turned blue. Lyra let out a breath. "It's done. I shut it down." Kale lowered the weapon and stared at her. "You did it." They returned to Veralia, tired but safe. Later, back in the observation room, they sat together again, this time closer than before. "You risked your life," Kale said. "You did too," Lyra replied. He looked at her, his voice quiet. "You've brought something back I thought I lost." "What?" "Hope and humanity." She smiled softly. "You always had it. You just needed someone to remind you." Kale leaned back, staring at Earth. Maybe this place isn't just a tower anymore. Maybe it can be something more. Lyra turned to him. "Like what?" He looked at her gently. "Like home." And for the first time, he took her hand. No words were needed. The stars outside sparkled quietly, as if blessing a story that was no longer about machines, war, or walls, but about two souls healing together. The stars outside Veralia looked brighter now. Earth floated below them like a glowing marble. But inside the estate, Something even more beautiful was beginning to grow, a quiet, honest connection. Cale Thorne was no longer the cold, silent man who gave orders from behind glass walls. He had changed, and he knew why. It was because of her. Lyra. She had stepped into his world like sunlight through a frozen window. She didn't try to break him. She simply stood beside him, strong and kind, until his walls began to fall on their own. And now, he couldn't hide it any longer. Cale stood at the entrance of the observatory. His hands were behind his back. His heart, usually steady and calm, was beating faster than he liked. Lyra stood by the window, watching the stars. He walked toward her slowly. "Lyra," he said, his voice soft but clear. She turned, surprised. "Yes?" He looked into her eyes. "There's something I need to say, and I need to say it now, before I lose the courage." Lyra's heart skipped. "All right," she whispered. Cale took a deep breath. "When I hired you, I thought you were just another worker. Someone to keep the estate clean, nothing more. I didn't want anyone in my life. I didn't want emotions. I wanted silence." He stepped closer. "But you changed everything." Lyra stayed quiet, listening. "You didn't just fix machines." Cale continued. "You fixed the way I saw the world. You reminded me that I'm human, that I can care, that I can feel again." His voice trembled slightly. "I never thought I could open my heart again. Not after losing her, but now, every time I see you, I feel something I can't ignore." Lyra's eyes filled with warmth. "I think," Cale said softly, "I'm falling in love with you." Silence filled the room. For a moment, Lyra didn't speak. Her hands were shaking slightly. She looked down, then back up at him. "Cale," she said gently, "you don't know how long I waited to hear those words." He blinked. I felt it too," she admitted. "But I didn't want to believe it. I thought you would never feel the same. I thought your heart was locked away forever." He stepped closer, almost in disbelief. "And now?" She smiled. "Now, I believe in you." Cale reached out, slowly, as if afraid she might disappear. But she didn't. She held his hand. "I don't know how to be good at this," he said honestly. "I'll probably mess up. I'll probably say the wrong things." "We'll figure it out," she said. Together, they stood in silence, hands joined, eyes full of something neither of them had felt in a long time. Peace. That night, Veralia felt alive, not because of its glowing systems or high-tech designs, but because of what had bloomed inside it, love, honest and new. Lyra returned to her room and found a note placed on her desk. In Cale's neat handwriting, it read, "Tomorrow, I want to show you something. Not as your boss, not as your owner, but as the man who's learning how to love again." She held the note to her chest and smiled. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she was no longer just surviving. She was finally living. The next morning on Veralia was unlike any other. For the first time, Cale wasn't working at his desk. He wasn't locked in the lab or buried in files. He was waiting outside the greenhouse holding 2 cups of hot tea. When Lyra arrived, still in her work clothes, she smiled at the sight. "You're early," she said. Cale handed her the tea. "You said we'd figure things out, so I'm starting today." They walked through the greenhouse together, past bright flowers and quiet fountains. The place was full of life now, just like their hearts. "I used to think this place was my prison," Cale said. "But maybe it just needed the right person to unlock it." Lyra smiled softly. "And maybe I needed someone to believe in me too." They stopped in front of a new section freshly built. A garden full of earth plants, carefully arranged. Cale pointed toward a sign above it. Lyra read it slowly. "Hope Garden, for new beginnings." Her eyes widened. "You made this?" Cale nodded. "For you, for us." That same week, something changed outside Veralia as well. Cale contacted his company on Earth and made an announcement. He was starting a new humanitarian project. focused on rebuilding the destroyed zones back on Earth. He wanted to use his technology not for war, but for healing, and he chose Lyra to co-lead it. Me? She asked in shock. But you're not just anything, Kale interrupted. You're the strongest person I know, and the world needs you. Lyra's hands trembled as she held the tablet showing the plans. You really believe in me? Kale looked her in the eyes. I love you, of course I do. Together, they began working on a future full of hope. Kale opened Virelia's doors to engineers, scientists, and peace workers. He allowed the estate to become a learning center teaching others how to build clean energy systems and safe habitats. And everywhere Kale went, Lyra was by his side, not as a maid, not as an employee, but as a partner. People noticed how different Kale had become. He laughed more. He listened more. And he loved openly. One quiet evening, Kale and Lyra stood once again in the observatory, hand in hand. Below them, Earth spun slowly, still scarred, but healing. It's strange, Kale said. I built this place to escape. But now, I want to use it to connect. Lyra looked at him. You already have. He turned to her and gently said, I spent so long living in the cold, but you brought fire back into my life. She smiled. And you gave me a place to finally call home. They leaned closer, the stars glowing above them, and shared a kiss gentle and full of meaning. It wasn't the end of a story. It was a new beginning. From that day forward, the story of Virelia became known across Earth, not as a tower of silence, but as a symbol of second chances. The cold millionaire who once pushed the world away had opened his heart, and the brave maid who once dreamed of the stars had found her place among them. Together, they turned loneliness into love, ice into fire, and a forgotten sky into a future filled with light.